The sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of orange and crimson when she appeared on the dusty path leading to the ranch. Her clothes were worn, stained with dust and sweat, and her eyes were wide with desperation. She moved fast, almost stumbling, clutching a small bundle tightly to her chest. The lonely rancher spotted her from his porch, his weathered face tightening with concern and suspicion. In years of solitude, he had learned to distrust sudden visitors, but something about her urgency made him pause. Her voice trembled as she called out, barely able to catch her breath. "Please, I need shelter just for tonight." The rancher hesitated, wiping dirt from his hands on his worn jeans. The night was coming fast, and the forest beyond whispered secrets he preferred to avoid. He saw fear in her eyes, raw, unmistakable, and against his better judgment, he nodded. "You can stay, but don't cause trouble," he warned, his tone gruff but not unkind, as she stepped closer. The rancher noticed the lines of exhaustion carved deep into her face, the haunted look that spoke of sleepless nights and untold pain. She carried no luggage, only a small, trembling child wrapped in a threadbare blanket. The boy's face peeked out, eyes wide but silent, watching everything with a wary stillness. The rancher's gaze softened slightly, though a knot of unease tightened in his chest. There was a story here, one she wasn't ready to tell yet. The widow's hands shook as she gratefully accepted a cup of water, glancing nervously over her shoulder toward the dark woods. "I don't have much time," she whispered, voice barely audible. "They're after us." The rancher frowned, stepping back into the porch shadows, torn between wanting to help and fearing the unknown danger that might follow them. It was settling fast, and the silence between them grew heavier with unspoken questions. She sat by the fire, wrapping the boy tightly against her chest, eyes scanning the tree line as if expecting figures to emerge from the shadows. The rancher busied himself with tending to the horses, pretending not to watch her too closely, but every glance she stole in his direction was filled with urgency, a silent plea for protection. He wondered who they were and what nightmare had driven this young woman so far from any town or help. The air cooled as stars began to appear, cold and distant. The widow's hands fidgeted with the locket around her neck, her knuckles white with tension. The rancher finally broke the silence, his voice low but steady. "You're welcome here, but I need to know what I'm getting into." She hesitated, swallowing hard, before shaking her head. "Not yet," she said, "not until I know it's safe." The weight of her words settled over them like the approaching night in the quiet of the ranch. The boy suddenly stirred, letting out a soft cry that cut through the stillness. The widow's eyes filled with tears as she whispered soothing words in a language the rancher didn't recognize. He watched her carefully, a stranger, fragile but fierce, holding onto a secret that could change everything. He felt the heavy silence shift, thick with fear and fragile hope. As darkness fully embraced the land, the rancher stood on his porch, staring into the night beyond his fences. The woman and her son were safe for now, but the danger was no doubt lurking close. He knew the coming days would test more than just their courage. They would shake the very foundation of his quiet life, forcing him to face shadows he had long avoided. Morning light spilled through the dusty windows of the ranch house, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. The widow's son sat silently at the edge of the worn sofa, his small frame hunched, and still, eyes staring blankly toward the cracked window pane. His face was pale, his lips pressed tight, as if words were trapped inside him and refused to escape. The rancher watched from a distance, noting the boy's quiet demeanor. Something so unlike the restless energy children usually held there was a heavy weight in the air, a silence that felt far too loud. The rancher cleared his throat and stepped forward slowly, hands open in a gesture of peace. "Hey, little one," he said softly, "you hungry?" The boy's gaze flickered briefly toward him but quickly darted back to the window, avoiding any real connection. His lips moved in a whisper too low to hear, like a secret carried only by the wind. The rancher's stomach knotted. This wasn't just shyness, it was fear, or worse, a broken trust that had settled deep inside the child's eyes. The widow watched from the kitchen doorway, her expression guarded but tired. She kept a protective hand close to the boy, as if to shield him from the world outside. When the rancher approached with a bowl of food, the boy didn't reach out. Instead, he sat frozen, the tension in his small body almost painful to witness. The rancher felt a strange pull, a need to break through the boy's walls, but every attempt seemed to push him further away. Minutes stretched like hours. The boy's silence filled the room like a heavy fog. The rancher tried talking about ordinary things, the horses, the weather, the endless sky, hoping to spark some flicker of curiosity or comfort. But the boy only watched, never speaking. His eyes haunted by shadows the rancher couldn't yet understand. The widow's gaze flicked toward the forest edge, wary and distant, as if the trees themselves held a secret. Later, the rancher found the boy sitting alone outside, knees drawn up, eyes fixed on the dirt beneath his feet. He knelt down cautiously, trying again to reach out. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to," he said gently, "but you're safe here." The boy's eyes finally met his, a flicker of something, maybe trust, maybe pain, but it vanished as quickly as it came. The rancher felt the weight of unspoken stories, secrets layered beneath the boy's silence. The widow joined them quietly, her voice barely a whisper. "He's seen things no child should," she said. The rancher nodded, understanding then that healing wouldn't come quickly or easily. There were wounds deeper than the eye could see, and patience was the only path forward. He glanced toward the horizon where dark clouds gathered, feeling the storm approaching, both outside and within. Throughout the day, the rancher observed the boy's careful movements, always alert, never relaxed. There was a distance, a barrier that neither time nor kindness had yet breached. The widow remained close, watching with a fierce protectiveness, as if daring anyone to come too near. The rancher felt caught between empathy and frustration, longing to help but unsure how to begin. As evening fell, the silence settled again like a shroud. The boy lay curled beneath a threadbare blanket, the widow's hand gently stroking his hair. The rancher stood by the window, the quiet weight of their presence pressing on him. Something about the boy's stillness felt like a warning, a sign that the danger lurking in their story was far from over. And beneath it all, a fragile hope lingered that with time, the boy might find a voice again. The ranch lay quiet under the blanket of night, but the stillness was deceptive. From the porch, the rancher noticed flickering shadows dancing along the edges of the forest, shapes twisting with the wind. The rustle of leaves sounded sharper than usual, broken twigs snapping under unseen footsteps. His instincts screamed caution, the solitude of the place suddenly feeling fragile. Inside, the widow moved restlessly, her eyes darting toward the windows as if expecting something or someone to appear at any moment. She spoke little that evening, avoiding the rancher's questions with vague replies or hurried changes of subject. Her hands trembled whenever she thought no one was watching, fingers twisting the hem of her worn jacket. The boy remained close, silent and withdrawn, sensing the tension in the air. The rancher's gut churned with unease. This wasn't just fear, it was terror lurking beneath the surface, an invisible threat hanging heavy like the fog rolling in from the hills. Later, as the fire crackled low, the rancher caught whispers drifting on the cold breeze. Words too faint to understand, but urgent, clipped the unmistakable sound of a phone conversation. The widow froze mid-motion, her head tilting slightly as if listening but refusing to acknowledge the voices. The rancher's brow furrowed. Who was she talking to, and what dangers did those murmured words hide? The unknown clawed at him, threatening to pull them all into something dark. The boy stirred, a low whimper, barely audible, breaking the fragile silence. The widow hushed him quickly, pulling him close and rocking gently, trying to soothe a storm that was only growing fiercer. The rancher stepped back, sensing boundaries being drawn. He wanted to reach out, to ask what haunted them so deeply, but she shut herself away, protecting secrets that felt heavier than the night itself. Outside, the shadows lengthened and thickened, cloaking the land in mystery. The rancher walked the perimeter, flashlight in hand, scanning the dark woods that bordered his land. Every rustle, every whisper of movement made his heart jump. He was no stranger to solitude or danger, but this felt different, an unseen menace that crept closer with every passing moment. The wind carried faint echoes of voices and footsteps that shouldn't be there. Back inside, the widow's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she stared out the window. The rancher's voice broke the silence softly. "Who's after you? What are you running from?" She shook her head, biting her lip, refusing to speak. The air between them thickened with tension and unasked questions. The rancher knew he was caught in something far bigger than just a request for shelter, something that could change everything. That night, sleep was elusive for all of them. The widow's restless pacing and whispered prayers filled the small house, while the boy clung tightly to her eyes, wide and unblinking. The rancher lay awake, staring at the ceiling, mind racing, with possibilities and fears. The shadows outside seemed to inch closer, and the rancher understood this night was only the beginning of a long and dangerous road. As the first light of dawn threatened the horizon, the rancher stood by the window. Once more, the forest was quiet again, but the unease hadn't lifted. The widow sat in the corner, silent and watchful, the boy's head resting against her shoulder. The weight of the night's secrets hung over them, thick and unbroken, promising that the darkness was far from over. The dawn broke softly over the ranch, but inside the small cabin, chaos erupted. The widow jolted awake, her heart pounding with a sudden, paralyzing fear. Her son's bed was empty. The blanket lay crumpled, but he was gone. Panic washed over her in waves, each breath more desperate than the last. She scrambled to the window, scanning the quiet morning landscape, eyes wild with dread. The rancher heard her cries and rushed inside, his face grim as the gravity of the situation hit him. The boy was missing. Without hesitation, the rancher grabbed his coat and called for the widow to stay calm. They burst out into the chill morning air, beginning a frantic search through the sprawling ranch grounds. Every corner was checked, every shadow examined, but there was no sign of the boy. Footprints, belongings, anything to follow, nothing. The silence was overwhelming, as if the earth itself had swallowed the child whole. Questions tore at them both. who had taken him. This linked to the widow's past. The widow's eyes filled with tears as she recounted the brief hours they had spent together, trying to find any moment she might have missed a warning. Her voice trembled with guilt and fear. The rancher placed a steady hand on her shoulder, trying to ground her in the terrifying uncertainty. "We'll find him," he said firmly, though inside he feared the worst. The boy's disappearance was not random, and the weight of the mystery deepened the silence between them. Neighbors were called and whispers spread quickly through the nearby town, but the remote location of the ranch made help slow to arrive. The widow paced restlessly, glancing nervously at the forest edge where shadows lingered longer than daylight. The rancher studied the ground carefully, noticing faint disturbances in the dirt, small tracks leading toward the dense woods. Hope flickered. Maybe there was a trail to follow, but the wilderness was vast and unforgiving. The sun climbed higher, casting sharp light on their desperate faces. The widow's mind raced through every detail, every step from their arrival, every stranger's to face, every strange noise at night. Her fears whispered dark possibilities she dared not speak aloud. The rancher tightened his jaw, realizing they were both trapped in a dangerous game. Whoever had taken the boy knew exactly what they were doing, and time was slipping away fast. As the hours dragged on, the search extended into the forest's edge. The rancher moved carefully, tracking the faint signs of passage, while the widow's quiet sobs echoed behind him. The boy's small belongings were nowhere to be found, deepening the mystery of how someone could vanish so completely. The rancher felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold morning air, a sense that the danger was closing in. Night threatened to fall again, and the rancher refused to give up. He stood on a ridge scanning the horizon. The boy's face burned into his mind. The widow sat nearby, clutching a small toy the boy had dropped in the rush. Together, they were connected by fear and hope, both unsure who was hunting them or what horrors lay ahead. The sudden disappearance was more than a kidnapping. It was a nightmare unraveling in slow motion. As darkness fell, the rancher lit a fire, the flames flickering against the gathering shadows. The widow watched silently, eyes hollow but resolute. Tomorrow would bring new searches, new questions, and perhaps new answers, but tonight, all they had was uncertainty. Somewhere out there, the boy was waiting, and they had to find him before it was too late. The rancher moved cautiously through the ranch grounds, his eyes sharp for anything that might have been missed in the frantic search. Near the edge of the corral, a small scrap of fabric caught his attention, a piece of torn cloth, stained and frayed. He knelt to examine it, recognizing the pattern as matching the boy's jacket. Heart pounding, he scanned the ground for more signs. Footprints, fresh and muddied, led away from the clearing and into the dense forest beyond, disappearing beneath the thick underbrush. The trail was faint but unmistakable. He paused, listening to the silence that had fallen over the land. It felt off, like eyes watching from the shadows. The hairs on the back of his neck prickled with unease. He scanned the tree line, catching a glimpse of movement. A figure crouched low among the branches, silent and still. The watcher held his gaze for a brief moment before vanishing into the darkness, leaving a cold trace of fear behind. The rancher's grip tightened on his flashlight as questions flooded his mind. Who was that? Friend or foe? The widow appeared behind him, her face pale but determined. She stared at the torn fabric, biting her lip. "That's from his jacket," she said quietly, voice trembling. "Someone took him, but I don't know why." Her eyes flickered with something deeper, fear mixed with guilt. She hesitated, then swallowed hard before speaking again. "There are things I haven't told you, things from my past, things I was running from." The rancher turned slowly, meeting her gaze. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. "You need to tell me everything," he said firmly. "If we're going to find him, I need to understand who we're dealing with." The widow nodded, tears brimming, and began to unravel the story she'd kept locked away. The man she'd fled, the danger that shadowed every step, the reason her son was now missing as she spoke. The rancher's mind raced, piecing together fragments of a past he hadn't known existed. The danger wasn't random. It was personal and deadly. The rancher felt the weight of responsibility settle heavier on his shoulders. This was more than a lost child, it was a battle for survival, and the stakes were rising. Every secret revealed only deepened the mystery. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of pine and earth. The forest seemed to close in tighter, the shadows growing longer. The rancher glanced toward the trees, feeling the presence of the watcher still lingering nearby. He wondered if the stranger had seen them too, or if this was a warning, silent message from someone who didn't want the boy found. The tension tightened, like a wire pulled taut. The widow shivered despite the fire crackling nearby. "I was hoping to leave it all behind," she whispered, "but it followed me here." Her voice broke, and the rancher stepped closer, offering silent comfort. They were bound now by fear and hope, trapped in a situation neither fully understood. Yet, the clues in the dust were just the beginning, a thread leading into darkness not as night swallowed the horizon. The rancher stood watch, eyes sharp and muscles tense. The search had changed. It was no longer just about finding a lost boy, it was about confronting shadows from the past, facing dangers that lurked in silence, and trusting a fragile alliance born from desperation. The sun was beginning to dip behind the hills when a rough silhouette appeared on the dusty road leading to the ranch. The stranger walked with a purpose, his boots kicking up small clouds of dirt with each step. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a worn leather jacket that looked like it had seen better days. As he neared the gate, the rancher stepped forward, hand resting near the rifle slung over his shoulder. The stranger's voice was sharp and demanding. "I'm looking for the boy. I know he's here." The widow appeared behind the rancher, her eyes wide with panic. She gripped the rancher's arm tightly, her voice trembling. "Please, don't let him in. We don't want any trouble." Her gaze darted nervously between the rancher and the stranger, fear flashing in her eyes like a warning flare. The rancher studied her carefully, noticing the depth of her dread. Something about this man unsettled her deeply. But the rancher had no choice but to confront the situation head-on. The stranger's tone hardened. "I'm not here to cause trouble. Just tell me where the boy is, and no one gets hurt." There was an edge to his words, a threat barely disguised beneath a veneer of civility. The rancher's hand tightened on the gate, his jaw clenched as suspicion grew. He asked, "Who sent you? And why do you think the boy is here?" The stranger's eyes flickered, but he gave no answer. Instead, he stared coldly at the widow. The widow stepped forward suddenly, voice sharp and urgent. "You need to leave, now." Her face was pale but resolute, and there was a fierceness in her tone the rancher hadn't seen before. The stranger's gaze shifted between the two of them, assessing, calculating. The tension thickened like a storm cloud ready to break. The rancher sensed that this was more than a simple search. The stranger's presence was a threat, and he was no ordinary man. The rancher's mind raced as he weighed his options. He knew the isolation of the ranch made them vulnerable, but he also knew he couldn't let a dangerous man walk in unchallenged. "You're not welcome here," he said firmly. "Leave, before things get ugly." The stranger laughed, a low, bitter sound. "You don't understand what you're involved in. This boy means more than you think." His eyes held a secret, one that hinted at deeper darkness lurking beneath the surface. The widow's hands trembled as she pulled the boy closer, shielding him behind her. "Please," she whispered, "just go." But the stranger remained, unmoving, like a shadow refusing to fade. The rancher's suspicion hardened into resolve. He didn't know this man's story, but he was ready to protect what little family he had just begun to trust. The danger was closing in, and time was slipping away as the sun finally disappeared, casting long shadows over the ranch. The stranger took a step closer. The widow's eyes flashed with desperation, and the rancher raised his voice, warning, and cold, "This is your last chance. Leave." The stranger hesitated, then finally nodded, retreating slowly down the road. But the threat lingered, hanging heavy in the air, long after his footsteps faded that night. The rancher paced by the window, watching the dark tree line as the widow sat silently by the fire. The boy remained nestled in her arms, oblivious to the storm swirling around them. The rancher knew the stranger's visit was a warning, a sign that the past was catching up, and the fight to protect the boy was just beginning. The shadows outside had grown darker, and the quiet ranch was no longer safe. "ChatGPT," the widow sat by the fire, her hands trembling as she clutched the boy close. The flickering flames cast shadows across her face, revealing a haunted past she had long tried to bury. Finally, her voice broke the silence, low and hesitant. "I didn't just come here by chance. I was running from him." Her eyes filled with tears she fought to keep hidden. "My husband, he wasn't the man I thought he was. He was violent, dangerous. When I tried to leave, he threatened everything I loved." The rancher listened intently, the weight of her words settling heavy in the room. She explained how years of fear had chained her to a life of silence and pain. The bruises hidden beneath her sleeves, the whispered threats, the nights spent holding her son close, praying he would never know the terror she endured. "I thought I could escape," she whispered. "But he found me once. I don't know if he's still looking, but I can't take the risk. Not with him and not with my son." Her story unfolded with painful clarity, a tale of desperation and survival. She described the night she fled, grabbing only what she could carry, slipping away into the unknown under the cover of darkness. Every mile was haunted by fear, every shadow a potential enemy. The rancher's heart ached at her courage and the depth of the danger they faced. This wasn't just a missing child anymore, it was a fight for freedom and life. The widow's gaze fell to the boy, who sat silently in her lap, eyes wide but too young to understand. "He doesn't know what's coming," she said softly. "I hoped this place would be safe, but now..." Her voice trailed off, heavy with uncertainty. The rancher felt the walls closing in. The past was not done with them, and the stakes had never been higher. She confessed to hiding the truth earlier, afraid that the rancher would reject her or that the danger would come crashing through their fragile refuge. The rancher reached out, placing a steady hand over hers. "You're not alone now," he said firmly. "We'll face this together. Whoever he is, whoever's behind this, they won't win." His words carried a promise, a spark of hope, Amid the darkness, as the night deepened, the widow's story stirred more questions than answers. Who exactly was the man hunting them? What lengths would he go to reclaim control? The rancher realized that the mystery was far more complex, entangled, with threats that reached beyond just the two of them. Trust became their only weapon against an unseen enemy. Outside, the wind howled softly through the trees, a mournful echo of the widow's past. The rancher looked out at the dark horizon, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down. Protecting the boy meant confronting shadows old and new, facing dangers that lurked not just in the night, but in the very fabric of their lives. The fire dwindled to glowing embers as the widow finally rested her head against the rancher's shoulder. Though the path ahead was uncertain and fraught with peril, for the first time in a long while, she felt a fragile hope. Together, they would fight for survival, for a future free from fear, even if the shadows never fully disappeared. The rancher sat alone on the creaky porch, the cold night air settling deep into his bones. Years of solitude had carved lines of quiet hardship into his face and soul. His ranch, once a refuge from the chaos of the world, now felt like a cage. The arrival of the widow and her son had shattered the silence, stirring emotions he hadn't felt in years: fear, hope, and a fierce protectiveness he didn't know he possessed. He stared into the dark expanse before him, wrestling with memories and the uncertainty ahead. Loneliness had been his companion for so long that the weight of human connection felt foreign and fragile. He thought about the choices that had led him here: abandoned friendships, lost family, and a life built on self-reliance. Yet now, the widow's desperate eyes and the boy's silent presence anchored him in a way no horse or sunset ever had. He understood that saving the boy meant more than just protection. It meant breaking the isolation that had wrapped around his heart like a shroud as he watched the fire's embers flicker and fade. The rancher made a silent vow. No matter what dangers waited in the shadows, he would fight with everything he had. This wasn't just about a lost child anymore. It was about forging a new family from broken pieces. The widow's pain mirrored his own loneliness, and their shared struggles bound them in an unspoken alliance, stronger than words. Together they would face the storm. The rancher's thoughts wandered back to quiet nights before the widow's arrival: empty rooms, distant howls from the forest, and the ache of isolation. Now, the urgency of the boy's disappearance burned like a fire inside him, awakening a fierce determination. He no longer wanted to retreat from the world. He was ready to fight for something greater than himself. The boy's life was a fragile spark, and he would shield it at all costs. He rose from the porch and paced slowly toward the barn, the weight of responsibility settling heavier on his shoulders. The ranch had been his sanctuary, but now it was a battleground. Each creak of the wooden beams echoed like a warning. Yet within the silence, a new rhythm formed, a heartbeat of hope and courage. The widow and the boy were no longer strangers. They were his family, and he would not let them fall. Inside the cabin, the widow sat by the dim fire, eyes tired but resolute. The rancher knew trust would not come easily, but each day they survived together built a fragile bridge between them. He wanted her to know she wasn't alone, that her fears were shared and understood. In his own quiet way, he began to open the walls around his heart, revealing a tenderness long buried beneath years of solitude. The night deepened, and the rancher stepped outside, gazing at the stars blanketing the sky. He imagined the boy's future life free from fear, filled with laughter and light. It was a dream that felt distant but no longer impossible. For the first time in a long while, the rancher allowed himself to hope. The loneliness that had defined him was fading, replaced by something raw, urgent, and real. As the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the faint scent of pine and earth, the rancher felt the weight of the coming days. The fight ahead would to test every ounce of his strength. But he was ready. For the boy, for the widow, for himself, he would stand firm against the darkness. In that moment, beneath the endless night sky, the rancher chose to be more than a solitary figure in the wilderness. He chose to be a guardian. The morning air was crisp and sharp as the rancher, and the widow stepped beyond the familiar boundaries of the ranch, venturing into the dense forest that loomed like a wall of shadows before them. The boy's faint trail was their only guide, a threadbare hope woven into the tangled undergrowth. Every step forward was heavy with uncertainty, the uneven ground threatening to betray their footing. Branches scraped at their clothes and faces, and the chorus of distant bird calls seemed oddly muted, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. The widow's eyes scanned the woods nervously, her fingers clutching the edge of her coat tighter with each step. The forest was a stark contrast to the open ranchland, an untamed place filled with hidden dangers. Yet within the wilderness, the widow found a strange sense of relief, a temporary escape from the shadows chasing her. The rancher noticed her shifting gaze and said quietly, "We need to stay close. This place can swallow you whole if you're not careful." They moved slowly, tracking the faint impressions left in the soft earth. A broken twig here, a disturbed patch of moss there. The boy's footprints were small and hesitant, but unmistakable. The silence between the two grew heavier, broken only by the crunch of their boots on leaves and the occasional rustle of a startled animal. Trust was a fragile thing, neither spoke of it directly, but the shared mission forced a quiet bond to form, fragile but real. The rancher's mind raced as he weighed his options. He knew the isolation of the ranch made them vulnerable, but he also knew he couldn't let a dangerous man walk in unchallenged. "You're not welcome here," he said firmly. "Leave, before things get ugly." The stranger laughed, a low, bitter sound. "You don't understand what you're involved in. This boy means more than you think." His eyes held a secret, one that hinted at deeper darkness lurking beneath the surface. The widow's hands trembled as she pulled the boy closer, shielding him behind her. "Please," she whispered, "just go." But the stranger remained, unmoving, like a shadow refusing to fade. The rancher's suspicion hardened into resolve. He didn't know this man's story, but he was ready to protect what little family he had just begun to trust. The danger was closing in, and time was slipping away as the sun finally disappeared. Casting long shadows over the ranch, the stranger took a step closer. The widow's eyes flashed with desperation, and the rancher raised his voice, warning, "And Cold, this is your last chance. Leave." The stranger hesitated, then finally nodded, retreating slowly down the road. But the threat lingered, hanging heavy in the air long after his footsteps faded that night. The rancher paced by the window, watching the dark tree line as the widow sat silently by the fire. The boy remained nestled in her arms, oblivious to the storm swirling around them. The rancher knew the stranger's visit was a warning, a sign that the past was catching up, and the fight to protect the boy was just beginning. The shadows outside had grown darker, and the quiet ranch was no longer safe. "Uchachiptgc," the widow sat by the fire, her hands trembling as she clutched the boy close. The flickering flames cast shadows across her face, revealing a haunted past she had long tried to bury. Finally, her voice broke the silence, low and hesitant. "I didn't just come here by chance. I was running from him." Her eyes filled with tears she fought to keep hidden. "My husband, he wasn't the man I thought he was. He was violent, dangerous. When I tried to leave, he threatened everything I loved." The rancher listened intently, the weight of her words settling heavy in the room. She explained how years of fear had chained her to a life of silence and pain. The bruises hidden beneath her sleeves, the whispered threats, the nights spent holding her son close, praying he would never know the terror she endured. "I thought I could escape," she whispered, "but he found me once. I don't know if he's still looking, but I can't take the risk. Not with him and not with my son." Her story unfolded with painful clarity, a tale of desperation and survival. She described the night she fled, grabbing only what she could carry, slipping away into the unknown under the cover of darkness. Every mile was haunted by fear, every shadow a potential enemy. The rancher's heart ached at her courage and the depth of the danger they faced. This wasn't just a missing child anymore, it was a fight for freedom and life. The widow's gaze fell to the boy, who sat silently in her lap, eyes wide but too young to understand. "He doesn't know what's coming," she said softly. "I hoped this place would be safe, but now..." Her voice trailed off, heavy with uncertainty. The rancher felt the walls closing in. The past was not done with them, and the stakes had never been higher. She confessed to hiding the truth earlier, afraid that the rancher would reject her or that the danger would come crashing through their fragile refuge. The rancher reached out, placing a steady hand over hers. "You're not alone now," he said firmly. "We'll face this together. Whoever he is, whoever's behind this, they won't win." His words carried a promise, a spark of hope. Amid the darkness, as the night deepened, the widow's story stirred more questions than answers. Who exactly was the man hunting them? What lengths would he go to reclaim control? The rancher realized that the mystery was far more complex, entangled, with threats that reached beyond just the two of them. Trust became their only weapon against an unseen enemy. Outside, the wind howled softly through the trees, a mournful echo of the widow's past. The rancher looked out at the dark horizon, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down. Protecting the boy meant confronting shadows old and new, facing dangers that lurked not just in the night, but in the very fabric of their lives. The fire dwindled to glowing embers as the widow finally rested her head against the rancher's shoulder. Though the path ahead was uncertain and fraught with peril, for the first time in a long while, she felt a fragile hope. Together, they would fight for survival, for a future free from fear, even if the shadows never fully disappeared. The rancher sat alone on the creaky porch, the cold night air settling deep into his bones. Years of solitude had carved lines of quiet hardship into his face and soul. His ranch, once a refuge from the chaos of the world, now felt like a cage. The arrival of the widow and her son had shattered the silence, stirring emotions he hadn't felt in years: fear, hope, and a fierce protectiveness he didn't know he possessed. He stared into the dark expanse before him, wrestling with memories and the uncertainty ahead. Loneliness had been his companion for so long that the weight of human connection felt foreign and fragile. He thought about the choices that had led him here: abandoned friendships, lost family, and a life built on self-reliance. Yet now, the widow's desperate eyes and the boy's silent presence anchored him in a way no horse or sunset ever had. He understood that saving the boy meant more than just protection. It meant breaking the isolation that had wrapped around his heart like a shroud as he watched the fire's embers flicker and fade. The rancher made a silent vow. No matter what dangers waited in the shadows, he would fight with everything he had. This wasn't just about a lost child anymore. It was about forging a new family from broken pieces. The widow's pain mirrored his own loneliness, and their shared struggles bound them in an unspoken alliance, stronger than words. Together they would face the storm. The rancher's thoughts wandered back to quiet nights before the widow's arrival: empty rooms, distant howls from the forest, and the ache of isolation. Now, the urgency of the boy's disappearance burned like a fire inside him, awakening a fierce determination. He no longer wanted to retreat from the world. He was ready to fight for something greater than himself. The boy's life was a fragile spark, and he would shield it at all costs. He rose from the porch and paced slowly toward the barn, the weight of responsibility settling heavier on his shoulders. The ranch had been his sanctuary, but now it was a battleground. Each creak of the wooden beams echoed like a warning. Yet within the silence, a new rhythm formed, a heartbeat of hope and courage. The widow and the boy were no longer strangers. They were his family, and he would not let them fall. Inside the cabin, the widow sat by the dim fire, eyes tired but resolute. The rancher knew trust would not come easily, but each day they survived together built a fragile bridge between them. He wanted her to know she wasn't alone, that her fears were shared and understood. In his own quiet way, he began to open the walls around his heart, revealing a tenderness long buried beneath years of solitude. The night deepened, and the rancher stepped outside, gazing at the stars blanketing the sky. He imagined the boy's future life free from fear, filled with laughter and light. It was a dream that felt distant but no longer impossible. For the first time in a long while, the rancher allowed himself to hope. The loneliness that had defined him was fading, replaced by something raw, urgent, and real. As the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the faint scent of pine and earth, the rancher felt the weight of the coming days. The fight ahead would to test every ounce of his strength. But he was ready. For the boy, for the widow, for himself, he would stand firm against the darkness. In that moment, beneath the endless night sky, the rancher chose to be more than a solitary figure in the wilderness. He chose to be a guardian. The morning air was crisp and sharp as the rancher, and the widow stepped beyond the familiar boundaries of the ranch, venturing into the dense forest that loomed like a wall of shadows before them. The boy's faint trail was their only guide, a threadbare hope woven into the tangled undergrowth. Every step forward was heavy with uncertainty, the uneven ground threatening to betray their footing. Branches scraped at their clothes and faces, and the chorus of distant bird calls seemed oddly muted, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. The widow's eyes scanned the woods nervously, her fingers clutching the edge of her coat tighter with each step. The forest was a stark contrast to the open ranchland, an untamed place filled with hidden dangers. Yet within the wilderness, the widow found a strange sense of relief, a temporary escape from the shadows chasing her. The rancher noticed her shifting gaze and said quietly, "We need to stay close. This place can swallow you whole if you're not careful." They moved slowly, tracking the faint impressions left in the soft earth. A broken twig here, a disturbed patch of moss there. The boy's footprints were small and hesitant, but unmistakable. The silence between the two grew heavier, broken only by the crunch of their boots on leaves and the occasional rustle of a startled animal. Trust was a fragile thing. Neither spoke of it directly, but the shared mission forced a quiet bond to form. Fragile but real. The rancher kept glancing back, his senses on high alert. The woods were thick with unseen eyes, and the feeling of being watched pressed on his skin like cold rain. Shadows shifted just beyond the reach of his flashlight, feeding his unease. Yet in those moments, the widow's presence was a steadying force, a reminder they were not alone in the dark. Together they pushed deeper into the wilderness, their fears rising with every step. The widow's voice broke the silence, soft but steady. He must have been scared, wandering here alone. Her words hung in the air, a mix of sorrow and hope. The rancher nodded, understanding the weight behind them. They were searching not just for a missing child, but for a fragment of safety, a spark of innocence in a world that had grown to dark. Their footsteps pressed on, a quiet defiance against the forest's indifferent vastness, that as the afternoon sun dipped behind thick branches, the trail grew more difficult to follow. The earth was soft and churned, evidence of recent passage, but also of many others who might have come before them. The rancher's jaw tightened, frustration bubbling beneath his calm exterior. Yet he forced himself to focus, scanning every detail, every sign. The boy's trail was fading, but their resolve was growing stronger. The widow stumbled over a root, catching herself on a moss-covered tree trunk. The rancher reached out, steadying her with a firm grip. Their eyes met for a moment, a silent, acknowledgement passing between them. The journey was as much about facing their own fears as it was about finding the boy. The forest pressed around them, dark and unyielding, but their fragile trust held them together, a fragile light in the encroaching gloom. As twilight bled into night, the duo made camp beneath towering pines, the crackling fire a small beacon. In the vast wilderness, the boy's disappearance was a wound that ached with every passing moment, but their shared struggle forged a bond stronger than either expected. Under the endless stars, they sat side by side, silent but united, two souls intertwined by hope, fear, and the fight to bring a child home. ChatGPT GC. The morning mist hung low among the towering pines when the rancher and the widow stumbled upon a weathered figure leaning against an ancient oak. The hunter's face was rugged and lined, eyes sharp and wary beneath a brimmed hat stained by years under the sun. He greeted them with a nod, sizing them up quickly before breaking the silence. "You're looking for the boy," he said, voice gravelly but steady. "I've been watching these woods longer than most. There's trouble stirring out here, danger you don't want to underestimate." The widow's heart pounded as she stepped forward, clutching the boy's small jacket tightly. "Have you seen him?" she asked, voice trembling. The hunter's eyes flickered with something unreadable as he shook his head slowly. "Not him, no, but signs are everywhere. Tracks, broken branches, shadows moving in the wrong places. This isn't just a missing child. There's something darker at work, something old and unforgiving." The rancher's brow furrowed. "What do you mean? What kind of danger?" The hunter's gaze dropped to the earth, voice dropping with it. "There are forces here. Things that the forest keeps, hidden, people who don't belong, and worse, things that aren't human. I've seen men disappear, never to be found again. The boy's disappearance isn't an accident. It's part of something bigger, something that's been lurking beneath the surface for years." The widow swallowed hard, fear knotting her stomach. "Who's behind this? Why would they take him?" The hunter shrugged, his eyes scanning the horizon as if expecting the shadows themselves to answer. "I don't know who, but I know why. Some secrets are buried deep in these woods, secrets worth fighting for. And if you want to find the boy, you'll need more than just courage. You'll need to understand what you're up against." The rancher's jaw clenched as he weighed the hunter's words. He was no stranger to danger, but the cryptic warning sent chills down his spine. "Can you help us?" he asked, voice steady but urgent. The hunter nodded slowly, stepping back from the tree. "I can guide you, but this path won't be easy. The forest doesn't give up its secrets willingly. You'll have to be ready for whatever comes." As they prepared to follow the hunter deeper into the wild, the widow cast a wary glance at the darkening woods. The weight of the unknown pressed down on her, but the spark of hope ignited by the hunter's presence was hard to ignore. The boy's trail was no longer a simple search. It was a journey into shadows where every step could mean life or death. The sun dipped lower, casting long fingers of light through the trees as the three set out together. The rancher felt the fragile bond between them strengthen, united by the shared fight ahead. The hunter's cryptic warnings hung in the air, a constant reminder that the dangers lurking in the wilderness were far more sinister than they had imagined. That night, as the fire flickered beneath the vast sky, the trio sat in uneasy silence. The hunter's stories whispered of past disappearances and unseen watchers. The widow held the boy close, her fears mounting but tempered by the promise of guidance. The rancher stared into the flames, knowing the coming days would test every ounce of their strength, courage, and trust. ChatGPT distensions simmered beneath the quiet surface of the campfire as night deepened around the small group. The widow's eyes darted nervously toward the rancher, her jaw tight as if holding back a storm of words. The rancher, usually steady and unyielding, found himself unsettled by the growing distance between them. Secrets hung heavy in the air, like thick smoke that clouded every attempt at trust. He wondered how long their fragile alliance could survive, the weight of unspoken truths and hidden fears. The widow's silence was no longer a shield but a wall, each unanswered question driving a wedge between them. The rancher's patience thinned as suspicions gnawed at him like relentless wolves. "Why didn't you tell me about the hunter sooner?" he finally demanded, voice low but edged with frustration. She flinched, eyes flickering with guilt and fear, yet offered no immediate reply. The rancher's heart clenched. Was her silence a protection or a betrayal? Doubt crept in like a shadow at dusk. He replayed every moment, every hesitation, searching for cracks in the widow's story. Was she hiding more than just her past? Was there a deeper danger lurking, one that threatened not only the boy but them all? His mind raced with possibilities, and trust, once their strongest bond, now felt fragile, teetering on the edge of collapse. The widow finally spoke, voice trembling but resolute. "I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know if I could trust you." Her confession hung between them, raw and vulnerable. The rancher's anger softened, replaced by a complex mix of empathy and wariness. Their journey had forced them together, but the path ahead was still shrouded in shadows, and every secret kept them farther apart. Arguments grew sharper, the air thick with unspoken accusations and fears. The rancher questioned his own judgment, wondering if he had misread the widow's desperation for deception. She in turn grappled with the fear that revealing too much might end their fragile alliance entirely. The forest around them seemed to echo their fractures, every rustle a reminder of the unseen dangers creeping closer. Despite the tensions, the need for cooperation was undeniable. The boys' disappearance demanded unity, even as their trust wavered. The rancher forced himself to listen, to see beyond his doubts. While the widow struggled to open the doors she had long kept locked, it was a delicate balance, a dance on the edge of breaking. But neither could afford to fall apart. As the fire sputtered low, the rancher's gaze softened. He reached out, offering a tentative hand. "We can't afford to fight each other. Not now." The widow hesitated, then placed her hand in his, a fragile truce forming in the darkness. The weight of their shared fear pressed down, binding them in an uneasy alliance forged by necessity rather than trust. The night stretched on, thick with questions and half-truths. Neither knew what lay ahead, but both understood the stakes had never been higher. The fractures in their bond were real, but so was the determination to find the boy and face the darkness together, no matter the cost. The dense forest seemed to close in around them as the rancher and the widow followed the hunter's lead deeper into the wilderness. Branches clawed at their clothes, and the damp earth muffled their footsteps. Suddenly, the hunter halted, signaling them to be silent. Ahead, half buried beneath tangled roots and moss, lay the entrance to a small, concealed hollow. The air around it was thick and cold, carrying a scent of earth and something far darker. The rancher's heart pounded. This was no ordinary hiding place. They carefully approached the shadowed opening, its darkness swallowing the weak beam of their flashlights. Inside, the walls were damp and rough, carved from the earth with crude precision. Scattered across the dirt floor were remnants, toys, a torn piece of the boy's jacket, and faint footprints leading deeper into the gloom. The rancher swallowed hard, the chilling realization sinking in. This was where the boy had been kept, or at least passed through. The quiet horror of the place struck them both silent. As they searched further, the widow's hands trembled, uncovering a faded photograph hidden beneath a pile of dirt, a snapshot of the boy and a man with a familiar face. Her breath hitched, eyes wide with shock and betrayal. The man was someone from the rancher's past, a trusted friend now revealed as a shadow in their nightmare. The rancher's jaw clenched as memories and suspicions flooded back, twisting the story into something far more personal and sinister than he had ever imagined. The hunter's expression darkened as he pieced the clues together. This wasn't just a random act, he muttered. Someone close, someone you trusted, was involved. The boy's disappearance was planned, and it was meant to hurt more than just him. The rancher's mind raced with questions. Why? What had been the motive? And how deep did this betrayal run? The walls of the forest seemed to close tighter, suffocating with secrets long buried. The widow's voice cracked as she confronted the rancher. "We've been hiding from more than just the past. We've been hiding from each other." Her words echoed the truth that neither wanted to admit, that the real danger had come from within their fragile circle. The rancher felt a surge of anger and sorrow, knowing that trust had been shattered in the cruelest way. Yet beneath the pain was a fierce resolve to expose the truth and protect the boy at all costs. The hidden hollow was more than a prison. It was a message, a warning that their fight was far from over. The rancher and widow shared a look of grim understanding. They were no longer just survivors. They were warriors in a battle that demanded every ounce of courage and cunning they had left. The darkness they faced was deeper than they thought, and the enemy was closer than they dared believe. As they emerged from the hollow, the air seemed heavier, the forest darker, but the rancher's steps were steadier now, fueled by the clarity that came with revelation. The fragile alliance between him and the widow strengthened, forged in the fires of betrayal and hardship. Together, they would confront the shadows lurking both outside and within their lives. That night, beneath a sky heavy with stars, they planned their next move. The truth was a bitter pill, but it was the key to saving the boy and ending the nightmare. The path ahead was treacherous, but for the first time, the rancher felt a fierce hope. They would fight, and they would win or die trying. The night was thick with tension as the rancher, the widow, and the hunter moved silently through the underbrush, shadows their only cover. Ahead, a faint light flickered, an unsteady beacon in the darkness. They knew this was the place where the kidnapper had taken the boy, the heart of the nightmare they'd been chasing. Every step closer tightened the knot in the rancher's stomach. The air was heavy with anticipation, fear, and the harsh reality of what awaited. Suddenly, a voice rang out, cold, controlled, and laced with menace. "You shouldn't have come here." From the shadows emerged a figure, tall and imposing, his face obscured by the hood of his jacket. The rancher stepped forward, his hand resting on the rifle slung over his shoulder. "Where's the boy? Why did you take him?" The kidnapper's eyes gleamed with something darker than anger, a twisted sense of purpose. The kidnapper's voice dropped to a chilling whisper. "He's not just a boy. He's a key, a pawn in a game you don't understand." He revealed alliances with shadowy figures connected to the widow's past, and a web of betrayal that tangled around them all. His motivations were as personal as they were sinister: revenge, greed, and a thirst for control that had driven him to desperate extremes. The rancher's grip tightened, heart pounding with anger and dread. The widow's voice broke through, the tension, steady but fierce. "You took him to hurt me, but you'll never win." Her words were both defiance and desperation, a plea for the boy's safety and a challenge to the darkness that threatened to consume them. The kidnapper smiled, a cold, cruel curve of his lips. "This isn't just about you, it's about power, and I'm not finished yet." The standoff stretched taut, seconds dragging into eternity as neither side dared make the first move. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath, the silence broken only by the distant cry of an owl. The rancher exchanged a glance with the widow and the hunter, a silent understanding passing between them. Their fight was more than survival, it was a test of their resolve, their courage, and their very souls. Suddenly, the kidnapper lunged, breaking the fragile silence with violence. The rancher reacted instinctively, the rifle rising in a blur. The struggle was fierce and chaotic, a brutal dance of desperation beneath the ancient trees. Every movement was fueled by fear and determination, each second a battle for the boys' life and their own survival. The forest echoed with shouts, grunts, and the sharp crack of breaking branches as the fight wore on. The rancher's strength wavered, but his will did not. The widow fought beside him, every fiber of her being focused on protecting her son. The hunter circled, watching for any sign of betrayal or weakness. In the end, it was not brute force but a moment of clarity, a calculated move that turned the tide. The kidnapper faltered, his mask of control slipping away. Breathing heavily, the rancher stood over the defeated figure, eyes burning with a mix of triumph and sorrow. The boys' distant cries reached them, a promise of hope amid the chaos. The confrontation in the dark had revealed the truth, shattered illusions, and forged an unbreakable bond between them. But the danger was far from over, and the fight for their lives had only just begun. ChatGPT. The forest fell silent as the rancher's sharp eyes caught a glimpse of movement behind a thicket. There, huddled and trembling, was the boy, dirt smudged and exhausted, but alive. Relief crashed over the group like a tidal wave, a sudden light breaking through the suffocating darkness of their search. The widow rushed forward, dropping to her knees beside him, tears streaming freely as she clutched her son close. The boy's small hands grasped her tightly, a fragile lifeline between hope and despair. But the rescue brought no instant peace. The boy's eyes, wide and wary, told stories the words couldn't capture. He was scared, deeply shaken by whatever horrors he had endured. The rancher knelt beside them, offering quiet reassurances, but inside he felt the weight of the unknown, still pressing down. The forest had kept its darkest secrets, and the boy's trauma was a wound that would take far longer to heal than the physical distance traveled. As they began the slow journey back toward the ranch, the widow's face hardened with resolve. She knew that finding her son was only the first step in a much longer battle, one that would demand strength none of them could yet fathom. Her past, the betrayals, the threats, they hadn't vanished with the boy's return. Instead, they clung tighter, demanding sacrifice and courage from everyone involved. The rancher's protective instinct burned brighter than ever. The boy's silence during the trek was heavy, his small body trembling despite the widow's comforting arms. The rancher exchanged glances with the hunter, both men understanding that the child's rescue was a fragile victory. Healing the emotional scars would require patience, trust, and time, resources in short supply given the enemies still lurking in the shadows. The rancher felt the burden settle deeper. This fight was far from over. Back at the ranch, the cabin that once felt like a refuge now seemed too small, too fragile. The widow paced restlessly, wrestling with the decision to confront the shadows from her past or flee again. The rancher watched her carefully, sensing the storm of doubt and fear swirling beneath her calm exterior. Together, they faced the impossible choice, to stand and fight for the future they wanted or run from the darkness chasing them still. The hunter, ever the pragmatist, urged caution but offered his unwavering support. His knowledge of the woods and its dangers was a lifeline, yet even he admitted the threat was far more complex than anticipated. The trio's fragile bond was tested anew as they grappled with the implications of the rescue. Trust was no longer a luxury, it was a necessity to survive what lay ahead. At night, the boy finally spoke, his voice small and hesitant as he recounted glimpses of his captivity. The stories were fragmented but terrifying whispers of betrayal, shadowy figures, and a world far darker than any of them had imagined. The widow's tears flowed freely, both sorrow and fierce determination in her gaze. The rancher promised silently that he would protect them both, no matter the cost. In the quiet hours before dawn, the three adults sat together, exhaustion etched in their faces but hope flickering still. The rescue had been a victory, but the revelation of deeper wounds and difficult choices marked the beginning of a new chapter. They knew the path ahead would be harsh and uncertain, but together, they would face whatever darkness awaited, united by the fragile light of hope and the fierce bond forged in the fight for survival. The first light of dawn spilled over the horizon, casting a pale glow across the ranch where silence now settled like a fragile blanket. The boys slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. his small chest rising and falling with steady breaths. The widow sat nearby, her eyes red but calm, fingers gently brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. The weight of the past still clung to her, but in this quiet moment, a fragile hope took root, a chance to rebuild what had been broken. The rancher stood outside, watching the sun climb higher, warming the earth and chasing away the night's cold shadows. He felt the lingering ache of battles fought, wounds unseen but deeply felt. The past weeks had forced him to confront not only external threats but his own guarded heart. The widow's presence had shifted something inside him, an unexpected bond that challenged his lifelong solitude. Healing, they both knew, would be a slow and uneven journey. The boy's trauma was etched in his silence and startled glances, a reminder that safety was fragile and fleeting. The widow wrestled with memories that refused to fade, the scars of betrayal and fear lingering beneath her determined facade. Yet within the pain, there was strength, a fierce resolve to protect her son and build a new life, no matter how difficult the road ahead. The rancher found himself opening up in small ways, sharing stories of his own past, the loneliness that had once seemed an unbreakable prison. The widow listened, and in those moments walls began to crumble. Trust, once shattered, was being painstakingly rebuilt, brick by brick. The ranch, once a place of isolation, was becoming a home, a sanctuary where wounds could heal and hope could grow. Outside, the forest remained a silent witness to their struggle, its shadows a reminder of dangers yet to come. The hunter stayed close, a steadfast guardian ready to face whatever threats emerged from the dark. Though the immediate crisis had passed, the world beyond the ranch's borders was still unpredictable and unforgiving. The trio knew vigilance would be their constant companion, but together they were stronger than fear. The widow and rancher often sat beneath the sprawling oaks, speaking quietly about dreams and fears, their voices weaving a fragile tapestry of hope. They both carried the weight of what they'd endured but refused to be defined by it. Each day was a battle to reclaim normalcy, to create a future shaped not by shadows but by the light of new beginnings. As seasons changed, subtle shifts appeared, the boy's laughter slowly returned. The widow's smile grew more genuine, and the rancher's stoic exterior softened. Life, in all its messy, unpredictable glory, began to seep back into their days. The scars remained, silent reminders of pain and survival, but they no longer controlled the story. Instead, they stood as testaments to resilience and the power of connection. In the end, the past was never truly behind them. It lived in their memories, their fears, and their quiet moments of reflection, but it no longer held them captive. The widow, the rancher, and the boy faced the future forever changed, but united by a bond forged in darkness and strengthened by hope. New beginnings were fragile, but within their hands lay the power to shape what came next.